room populate. Mary.
Let me see if I can move
Hank.
in.
And there she is. Evening, Jane.
Recording in progress.
Got the connection on the regular computer. There we go.
You're under control, Hank?
Yeah, I think so. It's connected.
All right. Thank you.
Is everyone getting an echo?
Yeah, I think we've got it under control now. So
Okay, thank you. I thought it was me.
That's Hank on 2 devices.
But it might, if he unmutes, it might happen again. Just saying.
So Hank, you should probably be able to hang up the phone at this point now that we've brought you in.
Yeah, and I've moved so I can hear. I'm not doing it on the headsets.
Very good.
Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't look like it pulled him in yet.
No.
Let me try that again.
So he's in as a panelist. This doesn't, oh no, he's in as a panelist. This doesn't have his. Well,
His video on yet. Yep.
No.
Okay.
He's in twice as a panelist, though.
Right.
Oh, now he's gone.
Well, Henry and Hank. Talk about multiple personalities. Well, why don't we get going and Hank can join us when he's.
Yep.
Right. So I'd like to call the planning board meeting of January 19th to order, quorum being present. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law pursuant to chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the planning board during this and future remote meetings will be done by roll call vote. So we are called to order. Introduction of planning board members and staff. We got David Rosen, myself, Rick Noonan, chair, Hank McCarl, who's behind the scenes at the moment, Greg Catamatori, our planning director, Beverly Bookin. Jim is not on the planning board. There's Jane Ramson, Doug Cook, our scribe, Catherine McNiff, and there's Hank down here. Okay. And I think Sean Henry. Very good introduction of staff. Next on the agenda is review of minutes from the January 5th of 2023. Can't believe it's so current, but wonderful, Catherine. Thank you. I'm sure we've had an opportunity to review it electronically, but we'll scroll through it just the same. Page 2. Page 3. And last but not least, page 4. I can't see Jane, and that's always a problem. Any questions, additions, omissions on the
Yes.
minutes?
I'm here. I have a few comments.
Okay,
I wasn't paying attention, but I'm ready.
great.
And then you called my name. Okay. On page 2, in section 3. Yep. It says Chair Noonan asked the board if there are any questions. Member Remsen makes the point. And I would like to say makes the point that the proposed changes are the product of numerous public meetings and public working group efforts. I'd just like to add the words public in there twice.
Thank you. Any other comments or
Yeah.
questions?
On the
Okay,
next page, Catherine Ryan makes a comment at the bottom. I don't know what SFH is, and maybe that could be spelled out.
Single family homes, but yep,
Oh.
we can spell that out.
Yeah, and then member Bookin says at her second sentence, it is expected that individuals, I would say just do instead of have done. Because we want individuals to continue to do their best to minimize risk.
Anything else, Jane?
Nope.
Any other comments from board members? So I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes of January 5th to 2023 as amended.
Second,
January 19th, yeah, or I'm sorry, January
Oh, I'm
5th.
sorry.
So
No,
January
5th.
5th is correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call, member Noonan,
Yes,
member McCarl,
Yes,
member Bookin,
yes,
member Cook,
Yes.
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes.
and member Rosen.
I think I have to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, one abstention.
okay, fantastic. So next, under the consent agenda this evening, Andrew and Ann Stevens and Nicole and Ryan Marquez to redivide land at 605 Essex Ave and 10 and 6 Winter Haven Road, Assessors Map 237, lots 36, 83, and 84. So I believe I saw Ryan out in the audience. I don't know.
I think Sal Frontero was representing.
Fantastic. Sal, the floor is yours.
All right, so for the record, Sal Frontiero, attorney with the offices at 46 Middle Street in Gloucester. I represent Ann Stevens, Andrew Stevens, Ryan Marks, and Nicole Marks. This essentially is a reconfiguration of 3 existing lots, and there will be, it's 3 existing lots now, it'll be 3 lots after the reconfiguration. The Stevens own the lot marked 237-83. And they also own the lot marked 237-36 to the west. And the Marks own the lot to the right, 237-54. Shown in dotted lines going sort of more north and south are the current lot lines. And those will be changed. And also it's worthy of note that these properties are split into 2 zoning districts. You can see where that dotted line there, R40 to the north, and then R10 to the south, and then the R10, R40 line runs parallel, it runs the same as the lot line going north on the Essex Avenue lot. So at the end of that dotted line where the cursor is, it goes straight up right there. Perfect. Yep. So what we're proposing to do is the Stevens are proposing to take a portion of their Essex Avenue lot 237-36 and move that over to become part of 10 Winter Haven. So this in effect will give 10 Winter Haven Road frontage, 100 feet of frontage. We went with R80 just to be on the safe side. There are rules of interpretation that apply when a property is split into 2 zoning districts. But to earn the side of caution, we went with the larger of the 2. That will have the adequate 100 feet of frontage going all the way up to the house, and it maintains the frontage width as well. It still leaves the Essex Avenue lot with more than ample frontage on Essex Avenue. As you can see, the area is sort of cut off by a wetland as it stands now. The Marks will actually become, so that lot will become more conforming. 10 Winter Haven will be more conforming than it is now. Essex Ave will remain conforming. And then the Marks's lot will consist of the parcel marked parcel A. You can see where that is on there. So they will be purchasing that from the Stevens. So that exactly, that's the area right there. They'll be purchasing from the Stevens, and they will have more than adequate frontage on Essex Ave, enough for 2 lots actually. And the Stevens will be purchasing the strip of land marked parcel B to the north from the Marks. So it's basically a reconfiguration of 3 lots to render each lot more zoning compliant on Essex Avenue. So it does meet the frontage requirement, and I believe the A&R should be allowed for that reason. Thank you.
Thanks, Sal. Comments or questions from board members? Greg, any color from your perspective?
Nope, just a reconfiguration, and as noted in the application, the frontage for the lots are on actually Essex Ave These, I think at least one of the structures I know was built in the 80s. Winter Haven is kind of more of according to the city records, it's identified as like an E911. There was a period of time in the, I believe, late 90s, early 2000s, where a number of access points throughout the community were named for 911 purposes. But this would essentially, as described, reconfigure and ensure that they all have the dimensional requirements with frontage from Essex Ave.
And I guess my follow-up to that would be, it's even though they're derived their frontage on Essex, they're still going to access the parcel through Winter Haven. Is that correct?
Yes.
And David?
Just a question, what's the reason for the reconfiguration?
Oh, they may be seeking in the future to develop maybe one house lot on 605 Essex Ave via the Winter Haven potentially. We're not quite sure yet. So that sort of remains to be seen. I can't really speak for the Marxes, but as far as the Stevens go, that's potentially what they're going to do. They're not quite sure yet. They're still, going over things and looking at the numbers, looking at the viability of doing that.
Could you pull the plan up again so we could just see that? So 605, which is the one that they might think of reconfigure or
The one that's marked
subdividing?
237-30, which is in the R10 zone. So if they did something there, they do something very modest. Would keep most of the lot in its natural state.
237-30 or
I'm sorry,
237?
36. My apologies. 237-36. Yep, that one.
Okay. And the other way to access that would also probably be through Winter Haven?
Yeah, exactly. They would be extending there either through zoning relief or a subdivision, perhaps. There's a possibility of a wetlands crossing, but that's probably not going to be cost effective. That's quite a bit of wetlands to cross. They'd rather avoid doing that.
Right. Okay, so the A&R here is for all three lots, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, would you like to take a crack, Jane?
I move that we approve the A&R to redivide land at 605 Essex Ave and 10 and 6 Winter Haven Road. Assessors map 237, lots 36, 83, and 84.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sean. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
member McCarl,
yes,
member Bookin,
Yes.
member Cook,
yes,
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes.
and member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to our public hearings part of the agenda. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law 48, Section 5, in the Gloucester zoning ordinance, Section 1.11, the Gloucester Planning Board to consider a proposed zoning amendment. Amend the Gloucester zoning ordinance 5.22, commercial land-based wind energy conversion facility, Section 5.22.14, monitoring and maintenance to introduce the requirement of biannual reporting on operations and maintenance. Now, it's noted that it's asked to be continued to our February 2nd meeting. I think Councilor Worthley was unable to join this evening, so I asked that we push this off to the 2nd without objection from the board. If there is no objection, we just need a motion to continue, please.
I move that we continue the public hearing for,
Commercial land-based.
for the Gloucester zoning ordinance 5.22 commercial land wind-based energy conversion facilities to the February 2nd planning board meeting.
We have a
I'll second
motion.
that.
Thank you, Sean. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
member McCarl,
yes,
member Bookin,
Yes.
member Cook,
yes,
Member Henry,
Yes.
Member Remsen,
Yes,
and Member Rosen.
Yes.
So I'm going to go a little out of order, discussion of the chair, to our next item, which is a definitive open space redevelopment, residential development, OSRD subdivision plan and watershed overlay district special permit filed by James M. McKenna Esquire on behalf of Colab LLC to permit 12 residential, a 12-unit residential development, 19 Cole Ave, Assessors Map 213, lots 20. Mr. McKenna is present, and he's asked that this particular public hearing be continued to the 2nd of February as well. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
We
Chair.
have received, if I might, Chairman, we've some good input from the city staff, and we're trying to address those issues. And we are attempting to get a meeting together so we can address them and clarify some matters and present more fully answers to those issues that have arisen. So we respectfully request an extension.
Thank you for that. Without
Okay.
objection, well, Jane,
I move that we. What's the word?
Continue.
Continue. The OSRD watershed overlay district special permit for 19 Cole Ave to February 2nd.
Second.
2 seconds, so you get double extension. Just a roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
Member McCarl,
Yes.
Member Bookin,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Henry,
Yes.
Member Remsen,
Yes.
and Member Rosen.
Yes.
Just a point of order, was that hearing opened already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're going to get back on track. Under public hearings, request for modification of definitive subdivision plan filed by Deborah Ellison on behalf of Backshore Gloucester LLC to remove condition number 6 from the approval requiring residential sprinkler systems due to compliance and provided fire access standards. Wow. At 227 Atlantic Ave, map 76, lot 50, and a request to modify the covenant securing subdivision road construction. So I'll reopen the public hearing. We do have Attorney Ellison here. And we do have some information in our online folder describing the basis for these requests. Well, Attorney Ellison, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Deborah Ellison, Ellison Law Office, 63 Middle Street, Gloucester. The applicant is Backshore Gloucester LLC, and Anthony Gagliardi is the manager, and he is on the Zoom call tonight. The engineer is Gateway Consulting, and John Judd is here tonight. The applicant purchased the property in October 2022, which was many months after this subdivision was approved. He's now involved in the practicalities of developing the property and requesting an amendment to the decision as well as the Form H covenant. You approved this on January 20th, 2022, and you issued your decision. Shortly thereafter, the owner at the time entered into the Form H covenant. Condition number 6 of the decision requires each single-family home to have a residential fire suppression system. And after investigating the state requirements and the cost of the system, the applicant's requesting that that condition be modified to no longer require the sprinkler system. My understanding from Mr. Catamatori is that the fire chief has weighed in on this, and I don't know if it makes sense for him to bring that to the attention of the board at this time.
I think in the packet, there is at least a quote from I didn't see a letter from Chief Smith, but.
Yeah, so there's some correspondence in the submission as well. It's kind of an issue of the fire department, when they review the plan, would not have the authority to require residential sprinkler systems because of the fire access and also proximity to hydrant, those types of things that were provided. So basically, at the time of the discussion with planning board, that was a recommendation, and the fire chief will continue to recommend that as many structures have them, but he also recognizes those that are exempt from that requirement. In this case, the planning board took that past recommendation, included it as a condition, and the applicant has provided information as to why they would like to not have to install them. And again, the chief is concurring that they do satisfy the fire access code 527, CMR 527, with the design of the roadway at a 20-foot width, and also providing an additional hydrant at the terminus, as well as the turning template of the largest apparatus has been demonstrated to be able to navigate the T turnaround at the end of the subdivision. So they're requesting essentially just to remove that condition, and then after you weigh in on that, they're also looking at requesting a modification to the covenant as well, to allow some construction to occur.
And with regard to the removal of condition number 6, the original applicant for this did not object to the requirement that there be a sprinkler system. And my client, after he looked into this, determined that it, first of all, wasn't required by statute. And also the fire chief has confirmed that they do meet the fire access codes, and the cost will be quite expensive. It's approximately $50,000 per house to install the sprinkler and the monitoring system. And since it does comply with the fire access code as well as the state law, we would respectfully request that that condition be removed. And most single family homes are not required to be sprinkled under the state law. With regard to the Form H, the covenant now prohibits the applicant from beginning construction on any lot until the road and the utilities work is completed. And we are asking that he be allowed to continue or to construct on lots 111 and 112 before the road and utility work is completed, and that no construction be done on lot 113. And furthermore, that there'll be no sale of any of the lots until the road and utility work is completed. The applicant has begun the road and utility work and will continue to do so as he works on the houses. He's prevented from proceeding with the utility work because there is ledge that has to be removed near the city's water main to allow him to tap into the system. And he has been told, in order to do that work, the water main has to be temporarily shut off in order to allow the hammering that's necessary. He's been informed by the DPW that he will not be allowed to shut off the water until spring 2023. So due to those unforeseen circumstances, he's requesting that he is allowed to construct those 2 lots and to hold the 3rd lot as security to ensure the proper construction of the road, and to hold all 3 lots from sale until that work is done. The site work is estimated to cost $535,000. You have that estimate in your packet. That's approximately 80% of the work is related to the road and utilities, which is approximately $428,000. The value of 1 lot that will not be released for construction would be $600,000. The value of the other 2 lots that will not be able to be sold will far exceed that. And I would suggest to you that that is adequate security for the city to make sure that the road and utilities are constructed appropriately. Winter construction will also cause less disturbance to the neighborhood, and therefore we request that the Form H covenant be amended, and we sent you a red line in the packet as to how we would propose to amend that covenant. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Ellison. So why don't we take the first one? Condition number 6. Any concerns from board members based on the input from the fire chief and the other work that's been done to allow that?
I'd also just note that it is a public hearing, so if you want to
Yes.
go to see if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak first, and then can have board discussion.
Okay. So again, as planning director has stated, that we are in a public hearing session. We do have 2 modifications to our previously approved subdivision plan. And they're fairly technical in the requirements that were originally approved. If there's anybody who'd like to speak in favor, please raise your hand electronically. Bottom of your screen, you'll be recognized. We just ask you state the name and address for the record in your comments. So anybody wishing to speak in favor of these two amendments? So we have a Mary, just I recognize her and just have you state your full name and address for the record, Mary.
Hi, good evening. My name's Mary. I live at 243 Atlantic Road. And I just have some questions about the homes that are going to be built. I noticed on the application for the sprinkler system that the homes were, they estimated that each home would be 4,000 square feet. So is it important to have the plans, the home plans ahead of time to see exactly what's being built there before you approve this? I guess my question is, are they single family homes or are they duplexes? That's one of the questions I have.
They are single family homes per the decision. And they also, if they were to be larger than the 7,500 square feet is where it requires a sprinkler system, then by state law, they would have to have it. So if perchance they were bigger than what has been proposed, the state law protects with regard to those systems.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else that'd like to speak in favor of these two amendments? Seeing none, anybody like to speak in opposition of these two amendments? Again, raise your hand electronically, be allowed to speak. Okay, seeing none. So if you don't have any further comment from the attendees, I'd like to close the public comment period of this meeting and then have discussion among board members.
So move.
You
Mr.
need a second.
Thank you. You want to take a roll call vote to close?
Yep.
The All right, thank you.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
member McCarl,
Yes.
member Bookin,
Yes.
member Cook,
Yes.
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes.
and member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay. Discussion about board members. So let's take the first item, condition number 6.
So, yeah, as I recall, this was the discussion around the length of the road and the distance from the fire hydrant. Am I right, Greg?
I mean, I think there are a number of factors that the fire department comments on, road grade in particular, and also access to the homes. I think there was actually some discussion also earlier on whether or not there would be an extension of the water main or not with a terminal hydrant. So I think some of those initial comments may have, kind of filtered their way into the feedback to the board, saying that the chief would be much more comfortable if there were sprinkler systems installed because of some of these potential confounding factors of the width of the roadway, the length of the roadway, and what was going to be provided. The final, and I'm trying to remember, and maybe John Judd remembers if he's on the call. The final determination was to extend the water main, place a hydrant. There was further discussion about the location of the hydrant to make sure that it wouldn't be in the swing of the apparatus if it had to make that turnaround. And so in the subsequent review, when this kind of came up, not just associated with cost, there was a revisit with the fire chief, as they do need to also eventually make a submission under that fire access code. And he said, provided, that things are consistent with what he's seen at this point in terms of the turnaround, the location of the hydrant, and the width of the road that's going to be improved to, that he was satisfied that it would meet the fire access code.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Greg, do you want to do these on separate motions or just?
Yeah, so the covenant is, I placed it in there. The public hearing aspect of the modification is really the removal of condition 6. The request for the modification of the covenant is something that, the applicant elects what type of security they would like. And that is more of a business item for the board. So the public hearing is really centered around the removal of condition 6.
Okay,
Okay, so I move that we remove condition 6 from the decision of the definitive subdivision plan for 227 Atlantic Road, map 76, lot 50.
I'll
thank you,
second.
Jim. Thank you, Hank. We have a motion and a second.
Okay, roll call. Member Noonan,
Yes,
member McCarl,
Yes,
member Bookin,
yes,
member Cook,
Yes.
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes,
and member Rosen.
yes,
okay. And on the second item on Atlantic Road, so are we basically accepting the,
It would be a motion to accept or approve the modified covenant with the security being the remaining lot 113 and with a continued restriction of no sale of construction on lots 111 and 112, but that construction can proceed.
I move that we approve the Form H covenant modification as Greg suggested.
eloquently described? So we have a motion made by Jane Ramsden. We have a second signaled in by Hank McCarl.
second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes,
member McCarl,
Yes,
member Bookin,
yes,
member Cook,
Yes.
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes,
and member Rosen.
yes.
thank you, folks. Attorney Ellison, thank
very
you.
much. Thank you all very much.
You bet. Okay, last on item under our public hearing is a definitive cluster development plan filed by James M. McKenna Esquire on behalf of HowMag LLC to permit a 26-unit residential development at 171 and 281 R Magnolia Ave and 607 Western Ave, Assessors Map 206, Lot 9, Map 198, Lot 20, and Map 199, and lots 11 and 13. Yes, sir. So we're going to open that public meeting. We do have Mr. McKenna here with Mr. Kelly as
Yeah.
well.
That's a mouthful. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking our project up again. We had a site visit, and it was very pleasant to see the attendees there. I think it was well attended, and I think it was a good walk through the woods. And we discussed a number of things, and it was gratifying to hear and listen to the comments and concerns that were raised. We subsequently received, I think, very thorough comments from Greg Catamatori regarding some questions that the board had, as well as staff. And we have responded to those issues as you've received, hopefully, my letter of response, as well as a number of updated maps and items that you requested. And so I do have with me David Kelly from Meridian Associates to help walk through some of those amended plans. Let's just, if you would, indulge me just to go through some of those items. There was a request by several folks to see if we could accommodate a sidewalk to be included on the roadway. And I believe that we can do that. And I will ask David to discuss how that sidewalk can be included on the plan. David?
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you again. The proposed dwellings and the existing roadway had a separation of about 32 feet between edge of pavement and face of the building. So therefore, inserting a sidewalk along the edge of the 26-foot wide roadway, 5-foot wide sidewalk, then made the driveway from back of sidewalk to front of house about 25, 23 feet long, depending on which specific unit you're at, which is still more than enough room to park a car. So my initial concern at the site walk of cars blocking any sidewalk that would go down along the edge of the road have been addressed. And in theory, cars can park in the driveway side by side, and somebody from the top of the subdivision could walk down to the bottom on the sidewalk and not be interfered by any cars parked in the driveway. There was some minor shuffling of the light poles at the end of the driveway. The trees, proposed trees were shifted a little bit, a couple feet here and there to accommodate, but from a holistic standpoint, that sidewalk now can begin up at the T turnaround and continues down towards Magnolia Ave, ending at the turnaround by the mailbox. Since there are no, as we talked about on the sidewalk, since there are no sidewalks in Magnolia Ave, providing the direct connection did not seem to make sense. We didn't want to be directing people out into the road, where the intent of the sidewalk, as we discussed on the sidewalk, was for the residents of the development to be able to mingle between themselves within the community and fully utilize their land and stay safe. So that's how the sidewalk became incorporated into the plans.
David, for those that don't recognize your husky voice, just name and association, just for the record.
Sure. My apologies, David Kelly, Meridian Associates.
Thank you. So questions on the sidewalk?
Yeah, I don't have a question on the sidewalk, but on this map, I was wondering, David, could you just go over what there's no key on the map. Could you go over what the various white lines, dotted lines, blue dotted, black dotted, what they all mean?
Sure. Jim, did we want to go through what the other comments were? And as I go through, I can
Yeah.
address everything, or do you want me to summarize everything now?
Well, I thought we would go through item by item and make sure that the board was clear on each item, if that's okay. So
That's great. No, sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's just talk about the sidewalk and make sure everyone feels comfortable with what we're proposing with respect to that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just quickly addressing the sidewalk going all the way down to Magnolia Avenue. Is there an impediment to doing so? Because it would seem that it would make sense, assuming these are homes that are going to have young families, that actually coming out and onto Magnolia Avenue with a partial sidewalk, possibly even on Magnolia Avenue, would facilitate a bus stop for the kids.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a quick item, because it may in fact impact Sean Henry's question. We are continuing to talk with the neighbor at 169 Magnolia Ave to carve off a small piece of land for his driveway and water line. So while that's still in play, if you will, we're not quite prepared to amend it further, but we would certainly take comment on that from the board to see if we could accommodate that. It's really a question of preference of the board in terms of how we would extend that. We thought initially that it would be, better to just allow the folks within this subdivision to be able to meander and to access the postal service at the end of the road, and to be able to come and go, safely on the road. We haven't brought it further down and connect to Magnolia Ave itself, particularly because it's couple of issues still remain to be defined. One is the aspect of the driveway and where we locate that.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Sean? Probably not.
Well, it is. I understand that his reasoning for the delay. I just think it would be an important point to actually finish the sidewalk all the way if it's going to allow the families that are living there to actually get from their house all the way out to Magnolia Avenue, which anyone walking from there is going to have to do.
I agree with
with
Sean.
that. Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay. Point well taken, and so noted.
You
We'll
can throw me
explore
on that pile.
extending
You can
it.
throw me on that pile too, Jim.
Well, I agree, and I think it should include, as you wrap around onto the road, a concrete pad to stand for the school bus. You know, the sidewalk to a concrete pad. Not, doesn't have to be big, but maybe not. Others can weigh in, but there definitely has to be a place for the bus to pick up kids. Isn't that the whole point?
Right, and I would think that even if you have to put a crosswalk in and extend the sidewalk down the other side of the road because you can't work out deals with the neighbor, that having a continuous sidewalk and then a pad, as Beverly's suggesting, makes most sense for future safety for any kids that are going to be living there and going to our public schools.
I would
Okay,
concur.
so noted.
Thank you.
Continuing on then, if there are no more questions on the sidewalk, we did receive some comments regarding the wetlands and the proposed development areas, et cetera. And you wanted to see clarity with respect to the divination of the project with respect to abutting parcels as well. And so we responded with a plan that we show areas for conservation, as well as identifying, the ownership of other adjoining lots. David, could you talk us through how we identified those areas?
Sure. So again, David Kelly, Meridian Associates. As you're looking at the rendering on the screen, the area in that tannish, brownish color is the resource areas, predominantly on the left-hand side. There are a couple of smaller isolated resource areas towards the center of the site. One up in here where my cursor is the vernal pool. There's one down here, one just off site. So those have been noted. The one that we thought we saw in this vicinity during our site walk, we did have that looked at by DeRosa, and it was determined that it did not meet the criteria for resource area. If Evan from DeRosa is on the call, if there are any questions on that. The darker green delineates areas of woodland that is untouched by the project. That is to remain as is to this day, which is a majority of the property. The area in the center, obviously where the road, the dwellings, and that lighter green is the area of disturbance area as part of the actual physical development. And the squiggly white lines are the actual trails that we GPS located and superimposed into the plan. So now, as we tried to walk on our site walk, as Greg, you, and I believe it was Jane who was also using her GPS, we were able to get those on here showing how we connect onto a budding property. So way up here, this trail leads out into Ravenswood. As we go down to this area, this one ends up going off to the Roberti property and onto private land. I'll zoom out in a minute. And so we have been able to show where those trails are in a more accurate location from what was shown during our site walk. While I'm going over the entire plan, to answer the previous question, that blue dash dotted line that kind of goes through the middle, that is the watershed divide line. I'm showing, which side of is the watershed that we're not a part of. The black dash line that kind of follows my cursor like this, comes down, goes back around. This is the Evan, this is the endangered species portion in here, correct? In the center. And then there is the 100-foot wetland buffer, which kind of follows my cursor around in this general vicinity. So that's what the other lines are on the actual subdivision plan set. Those lines are called out on the overall plan for clarification. But for the rendering, I was trying to keep labels off of it for the rendering.
On the Western Ave frontage on that piece, what's that gray area? Is that wetland in there?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So there was quite a bit of conversation about trails and issues identifying those, as well as where the subdivision is proposed relative to wetland And I believe we've shown that now with good clarity about what is on the ground and what we would look to continue to explore with the board in terms of how the open space will be preserved and how the trails integrate with the property. Are there any thoughts and questions about that?
David?
The middle white trail. Yeah, that trail. Where does that go? Does that go to Roberti or does that go to trustees land? That parcel, yeah.
So I left my mouse in my office. So I'm using my touchpad and I can't stand it.
So that goes to O'Malley?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the only trail that actually hooks up with other conservation land is that one trail. And is there any way to kind of reconfigure trails so that the public has access to some of this open space? And to have kind of some kind of a public loop system in there that would bring them down from the trustees' land, away from the houses and through the property and then back up?
Or a trailhead sort of on the road with a sign, maybe, to connect that trail to the road,
Which road, Jane?
the subdivision road.
Okay.
Well,
So
we haven't advanced that conversation to that degree at this point. We would be open to your thoughts about it. I think we have some concerns about liability issues as well as introducing, access to the land area. And I think we want to understand how that restriction will be implemented so that the HOA, it would be properly protected in the event that we continue to forward the idea of public access with all respect.
So will the open space actually be encumbered by a conservation restriction or not? It'll just be a deed restriction.
Well, we were exploring a deed restriction. But, I think we need to hear from the board about your preferences, obviously, but we're at this point, we're required to offer up a deed restriction of a certain percentage of property. Here we are opening up 82 acres of passive recreation conservation restricted area. We haven't talked about and advanced the conversation about public access sufficiently to make a determination now what that would look like and what we would do to accommodate that. And I think we would have to have more conversation about that.
Well, I'll
There's
just put a plug
implications
in.
relative to the HOA. There were implications relative to stewardship and implications about liability that were obviously need to be understood so that we understand what we can do and to take steps relative there too.
Beverly?
Well, as a practical matter, only the trail in the upper corner, in the upper portion that goes to Ravenswood has a public access in any event. All the rest of it, either you have to come into the subdivision park somewhere to walk, or you have to walk down the driveway, or you have to enter it from other private property. So as a matter of, fact, even with public access on it, you're not going to have many people being able to get access to it. Am I misreading the map?
Yeah, to add to Beverly's comment, I wasn't suggesting that you put in 2 parking spaces and a sign and let, everyone in Gloucester drive over there to access the trails. I was just suggesting connect it to the road. I mean, for the benefit of the residents, because you are talking about passive recreation, but there isn't any recreation unless you can get into the trail system. There's no soccer field or playground or horseback riding or whatever. So that is the recreation.
Well, I think the reason he just highlighted this too is that there's a wetlands impediment, you know, to that end of that southerly end of that trail.
Additionally, this is a stormwater basin and there's extensive grading in this portion of the project.
David, I'm just curious, you show that kind of extension from the turnaround. I know the force main lines that are going to be running to the field, which is kind of distant. Are they following one of those existing paths, or do you see a new path being cut in order to get there?
So
Trying to
the
remember
intent,
from the engineered plan versus the rendered plan.
so from the previous plan with the old trails, there was connectivity, but this trail, green, of course. Sorry. Let's go to orange.
Yeah, because you just pick a tool to draw with.
Somewhere in there, we'll have to connect those two
Okay.
trails to get down to the septic, which is
Way down
down
there.
in that corner.
You know, I'm just wondering, you know, with this kind of inclusion here, I'm using my cursor like you can all see it.
Yeah.
But the property to the north, that's kind of a parallelogram between the Roberti property and the Ravenswood and the subject parcel. You know, whether, you know, that might be an opportunity at some point if that could be acquired for open space purposes, in which case I'm just wondering the piece the leg that comes from the north leading to the stream on the opposite side of the developed area. Is there a way to kind of route on the southern side of the stream back to basically the trail that we were just talking about? When we were on the site walk, again, that path that leads across the stream, it's wet in certain times of year. I know the trustees as well as Greenbelt on some properties does some board walking. So if you can get past the impediment of crossing that stream, I'm just wondering, with all the grading work that's going to be done there, is there something possible to be at the toe of slope that would then lead around and tie back into that trail just to create the opportunity?
Jim, do you want me to speak to that one?
Yes, please do, David.
Sure. So as we kind of talk at the site walk, we're thinking of bringing something across.
Yep.
And then doing something which would then bring you back in this area. This is where the septic equipment's going to be. So trying to bring somebody around it probably isn't, you know, we could look at these two ideas, but definitely bring something up in this to at least here, and then figuring out which way we're going to go would be something we would be open to.
Okay.
Just a quick comment. There is some title issues with respect to that O'Malley property that we've been exploring. And I think that those issues date back many, many years. So we have not moved to acquire that lot. So it would be something we would have to look into further to see if that could happen.
And I wasn't necessarily suggesting that the onus would be on you as well. I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity there. It's kind of a little bit of a keystone.
No, it's a great lot. If we could clear up title on it, that would be of interest to you, to the city, and to expanding this area.
Terrific.
Okay, so moving on then, we have addressed essentially the title of the issues of the trail. And again, let me reiterate, we're open to further discussion on this. We want to make something work that works for the planning board, that works for the city. We just have some obvious concerns about how that happens and in what form that happens, and who's responsible at the end of the day for the concerns that I've expressed. So I think you can understand that. And as this conversation develops into a more fuller understanding, I think, we'd be open to conversations about how to do it properly and to see what we can do to make it real. Because we want to see, the objectives of the board met here. So let's continue to work on that issue.
Just a quick question from Beverly. Jim,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here. There are templates for how to deal with public easements for trails. I mean, there are only a limited number of options of how to deal with this. So,
Mhm.
we're not asking you to cut new law here.
No, that's a great point. But we would need the city's participation and partnership in that to make sure that, if there are easements or relative public access issues, that the city exercise its authorities with respect to making sure that liability and other issues are satisfied. That's a good point. So we do have Evan Guvendry. I always mispronounce her name. I'm sorry, Guvendry, from DeRosa here to help us discuss the issues that came up with respect to the water, the habitat areas, and the rare species issues, and the fact that our intention is to submit to the Conservation Commission in due course once we receive from the board some clarity with respect to this plan. So Evan, would you address the issues with respect to what you're planning to do and preparing for our filing with the Conservation Commission?
Sure. So Evan Guvendry for the record here from DeRosa Environmental. We are in the process of preparing a notice of intent application. The notice of intent will be a combined filing with Natural Heritage, a rare and endangered species program, because a portion of the project will fall under their jurisdiction. Once they review the project, they submit a letter of take or no take, and that kind of gears where we go from there in terms of the rare and endangered species. We don't know for sure, but I'm guessing it's vernal pool species, probably blue spotted salamander. That's the priority habitat. So what we're planning to do as mitigation for the project is to create vernal pool habitat on the wetland side of the development. And that is native species plantings. It's putting logs and boulders down for critters to find shelter. And so that's the basis of our mitigation plan. We're still developing that further, but as far as conservation, we would be submitting as soon as we have a pretty good footprint foundation for the development and the mitigation plan prepared.
You've received, hopefully, all of you, the plans as amended to show what that mitigation might suggest, as well as the divination of wetlands and the property line relative to the impact of the project.
Jim, it might be worthwhile just to reiterate for people that this is a cluster development plan. We've only had, I think, 2 or maybe 1 before, 2 potentially, but just remind us the ratios, open space to disturbed space. And I think you guys are a little long on the open space and well within your margin on the disturbed space as far as development goes.
Yes, right. We are preserving essentially in excess of the requirements, 82 acres of area, if I'm not mistaken, David, right? Such that, we certainly exceed the thresholds with respect to what we require for preservation to propose a cluster development here. So there's a vast element of preservation going on here in excess of what we would, the minimums of what we would require. Certainly, you know, the development looks to be modest here. We're not pushing the envelope relative to density because the topography limits us to that degree. So, you know, we certainly are keeping within the confines of how we can lay out the lot relative to each dwelling, and to try to accommodate what we can reasonably achieve with respect to the, you know, the limitations that the cluster requires. So we're well within the minimums, and in fact, I think this is probably the only cluster development that provides as much open space preservation that the city has seen thus far.
Okay, thank you. We are in a public hearing setting. We've had some presentations, some technical things this evening. I'd like to open the public. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in fact, Jim, there was still one more item on the letter I just want to touch on real quick.
The fire department, you know, the issue of this swept path analysis, we provided an analysis of how we are proposing to expand that hammerhead, if you will, the turnaround, to allow for the fire apparatus to successfully navigate in that area. And we have even increased it to some degree, so that there should be well satisfied that we meet those requirements for the fire department.
So we, just to be on the safe side, we extended the road by about 15 feet in this direction. Again, this portion of the road here is 26 feet wide. So as you can tell, there's plenty of room for the ladder truck to pull up. The nose of the truck never even hits the edge of pavement. Backs up into a 20-foot wide turnaround. The tip of his truck is still outside of the actual drive lane. And then he can proceed up and to the left and out of the site. And God forbid there happen to be two fire trucks that can still both clear each other side by side with plenty of room. So we've sized this to be about as safe as we could be.
David, this is professional advice. Don't give up your day job because your teleprompter skills are.
Hey, I'm doing this with a little touchscreen thingamajigger.
Okay, no Monday Night Football for you.
Oh, goodness.
So we
Mr.
are.
Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Before we go to the public comment period, I just, even though we're not touching on it tonight, I'd asked the question, I think at the last presentation, and was said from the applicant that they're still discussing which way to go on this. And in terms of affordability, there are 26 units here, so 80% AMI are inclusionary, would require them to build 4 units. If they elect to do 60% AMI, it would require 3 units. And was speaking with with our Senator Bruce Tarr not too long ago, and I had mentioned before at a meeting unrelated to this, the workforce housing program that Mass Housing has that provides grants to developers of up to $100,000 per unit if they choose to build over and above what's required by inclusionary. So the 60% AMI target, which we had, which we just passed last year, is, I think, a realistic and relatively aggressive and hopeful look at what our community needs are for affordable housing. And I think it'd be very welcome if the developer chose to address those needs, and also beneficial financially for the developer, potentially with the grant money from Mass Housing with this workforce housing to provide an additional unit, so that we're addressing 60% AMI with 4 units instead of the required 3. So I'll just toss that out there as something for them to think about before they make their final determination. Because I think we're at a critical time here to start addressing our realistic affordable needs for Gloucester, and also we have some funding in the Affordable Housing Trust now that could potentially be leveraged in a project like this to provide the levels of affordability that that we need in Gloucester. So just toss that out there, something for you folks to think about before you come back. That's it.
Well said, Sean.
Thank you for that comment. We'll take it under advisement. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question also. The applicant submitted a list of waivers, which I think are worth discussing. It doesn't have to, I don't know when the appropriate time is to do that, but I just don't want to forget to look at those.
Okay, thank you, Jane. So without objection, I'd like to open the public comment period. So again, this is a second evolution or our first meeting after the site visit, which was productive, and it's much easier to see things when you're on the ground. So if there's anybody that would like to speak in favor of this project moving forward with the things that have been outlined this evening, you can certainly raise your hand electronically. We'll just state your name and address for the record. And we'll be happy to take your comments. Seeing none, anybody like to speak in opposition to the project and the items that we've discussed this evening so far? Again, raise your hand electronically, name and address for the record. Seeing none. Oh, right at the buzzer. It's Eric. You could recognize Eric. And again, just full name and address for the record, Eric.
Yeah, Eric Hinderly, 7 Mason Court. I'm actually, I had to run up into a room. My wife's cooking dinner and stuff, so I'm commenting on the. I approve of it. I like it, and I know this is like the opposition one. Is that okay?
Yeah, your comments are well received.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a very well thought out plan. I think it's what Mr. Henry talked about, just with monies that are available through mass housing to have a little bit more like affordable units, like 60% AMI. I think that is really something to consider. But it looks great. We need it as a city, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else like to chime in? Seeing none, Jane, would you like to make a motion to close the public hearing? Comment period, they said? Go ahead, Greg.
I think we should probably keep things open. You don't have to close public comment because you've taken it this evening. But I think we can probably start discussing some next steps. And I just wanted to, and I can offer some comments as well.
Very good.
So I took a crack at summarizing some of the points that were raised on the site visit, as well as reiterating a couple of points from the last hearing. Again, a lot of those focused around sidewalk inclusion in the development, along with a couple of number of other things. Process-wise, the application was also submitted to the Board of Health. We have yet to receive a report from them. They're in a little bit of a kind of a man down situation right now with the absence of a director. But I know that there's been good outreach from Leslie Whalen, who's the public health sanitarian, and David Kelly. So that's something I think is important for the board to have for the strength of the decision, also for the applicant to have that feedback from the Board of Health. We have that same scenario with another agenda item that was continued this evening. So I'm not exactly certain of the timing on when that will come in. I'm hoping it's not protracted and within a meeting or two. The only other point that I raised was whether or not, and then the response from the applicant is, kind of a sequential approach to the permitting. Obviously, the final piece before any construction will be an approved permanent wastewater solution for the project. They have submitted a lot of evidence for that system, and that's something that typically will come later. And that's usually what you'll also hear in the report from the Board of Health. But one of the things that's kind of the balance here is, working with the grades of the property and minimizing the impact to a substantial portion of the site, comes at the, kind of conflict with most of the development is within the conservation jurisdiction and also this additional jurisdiction of endangered species habitat. So that was one suggestion about whether or not there'd be kind of a first read with the commission to kind of see how they view this project as well, because it is kind of, certainly rings a lot of the bells in terms of open space preservation, but there's also this, still to be determined potential impact on the environment as well. Again, the Conservation Commission is usually has the right to be the last one. But it's also just a question about whether or not, they're introduced to the project in some way to provide some sort of feedback to the board before you make your decision.
Fair enough. Any other comments? Jim?
Yeah, Mr. McKenna gave a qualitative answer to the question of open space, but quantitatively, if I'm not mistaken, Greg, please correct me, a cluster development has to have a minimum of 30% open space. Is that correct?
Correct.
And looking at the map, it's probably close to 85%, something like 80 to 85%. Obviously, it's a significant amount. So it's close to at least 2 and probably close to 3 times that required. And I'm sure that's documented in the documents that have come in. But for the purposes of our people who are listening in, I wanted to make that point.
Thanks again, Beverly.
The only other point I would make as well with the revised plans, we also didn't have a completed review from the engineering department. They are working on that, so I would anticipate to have that in advance of the next meeting, as well as confirmation from the fire chief on the turnaround that's been enhanced and provided in this revised version of the plans.
Mr. Finnegan, do you have any comments before we move along?
Thank you, Chairman. Wayne Finnegan from Howland Development, Howmag LLC, obviously. Just like to say, we appreciate the commitment from this board to get out onto the site and walk the site with us. Really understand the impact that we see in a positive way to the community. And I just want to appreciate my team for their, extensive review of this project. And the community for their input. There's not a lot being said publicly to us, but we have had quite a few private conversations that have resulted in the design and that we've come up with. And we look forward to just continuing the process and getting this closer to completion.
Perfect. Thanks, Wayne. So do we need to, do you think this February 2nd meeting is going to be time enough, or you want to
I think we should let's target that to see how much we can accomplish between now and then. The kind of outstanding, not super clear, and maybe Dave Kelly has a little bit more, is the timing on the Board of Health review.
We have had some correspondence with the health agent, and I believe they're looking for some peer review assistance with respect to review of our submission.
Potentially,
right. So we're in conversation with them about that, and we'll support whatever they determine they need, and then receive that information. But we have Dan Ottenheimer on our team, who is helping us with respect to interfacing with the Board of Health, and hope to answer whatever questions they have.
There is one person in the attendees list identified as Chris with his hand up, or her hand up, could be. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Christopher Malo, and I'm here with my wife Karen Malo. We live at 288 Magnolia Avenue. And I was just curious, you spoke on the wastewater and septic. I think in the drawing, you showed a septic system a little bit away from the development. What would be the disturbance to the land in order to pipe down to that septic system?
David, you want to take that
Sure.
one up?
So, Christopher, can you visually see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. So in the street, each unit's going to have its own septic system with a micro pump. There's going to be a low pressure system located within the proposed development. Then up at the top of the hill, up in this area, will be the dispersion, the pump chamber, the recirculation tank, all of the mechanics for the most part. The line would then traverse down the existing path, cut across, stick in the existing path, and then the leach field will be constructed in this vicinity. This path would simply be used by small machinery to lay down. I believe there are 3 very small pipes, so, less than 3-inch diameter each, that'll get down to the leach fields, and then it'll get constructed with, again, smaller equipment as possible to basically just get the materials down there and build it. So it'd basically just be a path for all intents and purposes.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one other question. Are the neighbors around this area going to be notified that this is going on? Because I actually just heard about this because of someone else living on a different street. But a lot of my neighbors don't even know this is happening.
Well, forgive me, but we certainly have sent out notifications required for this filing to every abutter on this project. So I hope that you received that notice.
I did not.
Yeah. But certainly, as this project goes forward, we will continue to be as available as necessary for the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris. Hey, Greg, you want to just briefly talk about next steps, or Beverly, go ahead.
Yeah, Jane had asked for us to just get a list of the mods, just to make sure there's nothing here that gives anybody heartburn. We don't want to
We
take
we
this
have
to.
Any piece of
Okay,
property.
but I mean, are there any reason for us to discuss those, Jane? Any concerns so that we give direction do you have any concerns? We give direction to the applicant's team.
Yeah, thank you. I don't understand the ramifications of some of them, like granite curves versus bituminous concrete berms, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, or the drainage issues. So I'm relying on Greg for that. And then trees have been proposed only on the right side of the road rather than on both sides of the road. So I don't know if that warrants discussion. I know that David is often passionate about trees, and I am too. Slopes. I don't know. Maybe Greg wants to weigh in on this request.
Excuse me. Any of those that deal with engineering, that will be something that I expect that we'll have feedback from the engineering department as well. The curbing issue is one that's comes up a number of times. Granite is more costly to install, and also depending upon the road design and the type of collection system, it's sometimes more warranted than other times. If it's a traditional collection system with catch basins, wanting to make sure you have the reveal to direct the water into those basins before they go into a larger end of pipe solution with a detention basin. So in this case, they are proposing, kind of an extruded berm as the edge of the roadway. It's not uncommon with what's been approved by the board in other subdivisions. So that's kind of there's an aesthetic there. There's a cost associated with it as well. The board standard is to have granite curbing. And in some instances also that's been requested to be sloped granite curbing rather than vertical granite curbing, again, because there's some cost associated with that. And also it's a little bit less harsh, from a parking perspective, having the vertical granite curbing. So if you want to, we can go through those and have Dave Kelly kind of walk through them right now in terms of the rationale and reasoning for them. We have the time. It's only 6:21 to get a first pass at it, and then folks can also think about that between now and the next meeting.
Okay, here we go.
All
David?
right. Ready to go. I am muted. I am muted. Okay, the profiles, typically want to show all utilities, because we show stormwater, we show drainage, we show water, we show utilities. I mean, sorry, tel data. We just don't show the sewer because that is shown on the septic plans, which is a separate entity. The subdivision plans, defer to the septic plans for majority of the detailed information on the sanitary sewer. We have overlaid the plans and confirmed that there is no conflict with utilities. So we're just requested a waiver to not show that. Number 2, the locus plan is shown at 400 scale instead of 1,000 scale. It just gives you a more detailed view of the project area in regards to the surrounding property. If we showed at 1 inch equals 1,000 feet, you wouldn't get as it wouldn't be as detailed, and it would just look like a giant forest. Number 3, the top and toe proposed slopes adjacent to the roadway. We've provided the grading. On the grading plans, we just don't show those specific spot grades on the profiles. It just cluttered it up. That becomes more of a construction situation and more of a construction detail than it does from a permitting design process. Number 4, the dead end street shall not exceed 500 feet. We're proposing 1,680. We've proposed the T turnaround at the end for the fire department. We have proposed sprinklers for the house. We've provided a relatively wide road for the use. We provided sidewalks, so the length of the street we do not feel is of an issue for this project. As Greg just talked about with the granite curb, there are different types of curbing that's available. There's vertical granite, there's sloped granite. They'll come with cost. We chose to request bituminous curb. It has been used quite prevalently in the area, especially on subdivision right up the street from this, especially on the side of the road where we have the roadway interfacing with the sidewalk. By having the bituminous curb, the bituminous berm, it allows the vehicles to kind of pull over a little bit and get off the road, so to speak, while visiting their friends. Number 6, 4 feet of cover over the drain pipes. There's one section down near the bottom where we have less than that for our cover. And to be on the safe side, we've gone with a ductile iron pipe, which is about as strong as you're going to get. Generally, in the engineering world, 2 feet of cover over a drain pipe is more than adequate. Your regulations require 4. So in the instance where we have less than 4, we went with a stronger pipe just to make sure that there's no potential for crushing or damaging of the pipe over the years while it's installed. Number 7 is similar. Standards on your standards require reinforced concrete, which has been an engineering standard for drain pipe for decades up in this area. And over the past 10, 15 years, HDPE has been substituted in quite a few locations, quite a few municipalities. It's just as strong as RCP. It lasts longer. It's a lot easier to install. It doesn't weigh as much. It allows for a quicker installation. And there is a monetary savings using HDPE as well. Again, it's used in the engineering world up in New England, all over the place.
What does
Number 8.
HDPE stand for?
High density polyethylene. It's that black corrugated plastic pipe. I'm sure you've all seen it some way, shape or form somewhere. Some parking lots actually use it for sonotubes for their light poles instead of using the cardboard. You might have seen them. Number 8, we're only putting sidewalk on one side of the street, only houses on one side of the street. So sidewalks one side of the street kind of seem to go. Number 9, only trees on one side of the road. And I actually wanted to get into that one briefly if I could, because of the specifics of the development and the way that it's situated with the resource areas. There's not much of a shoulder on what we're calling the left-hand side of the road as you look at the plan. So we're just putting the street trees on the right-hand side. However, as part of the mitigation that Evan has prepared, and there are more trees being planted on the left-hand side of this road than you will have probably seen in most of your subdivisions throughout the city.
On the left or the right side?
On the left.
It seems like on your plan, there were quite a few on the plan on the right-hand side of the road.
Right, but that's on the subdivision plan. What I'm saying is when the mitigation plan is prepared and submitted for conservation, when that's finalized, you are going to see an amazing amount of plantings going in along the left-hand side.
Okay.
I
And will the planting plan on the right side of the road that you're showing there, will it for the street trees, will it more or less resemble what you're showing here?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, down at the entrance, we just use some generic symbols, but I'm sure that the landscape architect is going to come in and have a much better vision. And, you want to have a nice welcoming entrance to the property instead of just, 24 oak trees or something. You know what I mean? There'll be some nice plantings in there. But everything will be done in accordance with what is required from the city. So that's my quick once over on the waivers. If you have any questions.
Thanks. I look forward to seeing the mitigation tree plan when that becomes done.
Any other questions on the waivers from board members at this point? We certainly have a ways to go, but I think it was worthwhile to take the comment since we have time. We do see Mr. McCarthy, Christopher McCarthy, in the attendees list with his hand raised, if we might. Floor is yours, Chris. Name and address.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Chris McCarthy, 166 Bray Street, Gloucester. I just wanted to say, I believe that we'll be changing the plan to bring that curb down to Magnolia Ave on the mailbox side of the project. I think it does make sense, and we should have enough area to put a stop, a little standing stop for the residents that might want to get onto a bus. We'll try to put that and get the plan updated to include that. I just wanted to mention that we will be doing that. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none. Just briefly, Greg, next steps.
Yeah, I think we certainly have some homework pieces on the city side, and we'll hope that the Board of Health review kind of advances. But in particular, I think the engineering department's comment on the plan overall, as well as there are some specific, waiver requests, as Jane has pointed out, that are engineering related. I can tell you just also from city project experience, as well as past subdivisions, a lot of those substitutions of materials have been accepted in the past. City also uses some of those materials in city projects. So I don't see those probably as being much of an issue, but we'll provide comment on the waiver requests as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
So I think with all of that, I would say 2 weeks might be aggressive. And I look to Dave as well as Jim McKenna, just in terms of making sure that that review gets completed. I don't know what that timeline is. So whether or not it might make sense to go to the second meeting in February.
Yeah.
Just
I was thinking the
FYI,
same way. I was feeling that we need to give the city time to complete its review. So, we'll defer to you, Greg, in terms of the timing.
so I'm away February 16th, which is not a deal breaker, but just so everybody knows. So continue the public hearing to the 16th.
That the date, Greg?
It's
Can be.
Yeah, it can be. I think the second is probably a little too soon. And I'm just trying to remember if any members have missed any sessions at this point. So I just want to make sure that we have voting members. You can only miss one session, but you can watch a recording of the meeting if you had missed one. I don't think we're in that situation yet. I'm trying to remember if, David, you were in the open meeting for this.
I missed the last meeting on the 5th.
Okay. And moving forward, looking at February and March, Jane's mentioned she's out the 16th, and you are out when?
I'm out February 1st through March 8th.
Okay.
So it looks like I'm gonna miss 3. I just looked at the calendar. I think I'm gonna miss 3 meetings.
And I'm traveling on the 2nd.
Of February?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, if we're missing 2 of us, the second meeting in February, should we do the first meeting in March? Is that too far away?
So I can make the 16th. I can't make the 2nd, is what I'm saying.
Right, we're missing me
Yeah.
and David on the 16th.
Yeah, but you're missing David on the 2nd.
Yeah.
March, or whatever that date is.
Yeah, I'm just saying we'll miss one person in the beginning of March. We'll miss 2 people at the end of February. I don't know. It's really up to the applicant. How do you?
Well, certainly.
Well, I'm just
everyone.
trying to make sure that, we have as many members that can vote on it as possible. And if David misses another session, he will not be able to participate in the vote.
Well, that does not hurt our quorum, though.
It doesn't hurt the quorum. It means that there'll be 6 members to vote.
And so why don't we move it to the 16th, and then the applicant could decide if they want a full board or not. I mean, just to give a deadline sort of target for the work that needs to be done. And if it needs to go to the next.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that maybe the meeting of March 1st might be better, just because then you'll have six that are participating, if that makes sense with you, Jim.
It'd be March 2nd, I think.
March
March 2nd is a
Oh,
Thursday.
sorry, you're right, March 2nd.
That's fine.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, then I move that we continue the public hearing for the definitive cluster plan, development plan for 171 and 281R Magnolia Avenue and 607 Western Avenue to March 2nd.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Hank. Roll call vote, please.
Member Noonan,
Yes.
member McCarl,
Yes,
member Bookin,
Yes.
member Cook,
Yes.
member Henry,
Yes.
member Remsen,
Yes,
and member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you for everybody.
Thanks,
Appreciate
David.
it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, other business. Any
Just
matters?
give you a
Go ahead.
brief little update. I presented the floodplain overlay district and associated amendments to the Planning and Development Standing Committee last evening. And they have continued that to their meeting on February 8th. And the city council has scheduled a public hearing on that for February 14th, Valentine's Day. And so I did do some additional research just to kind of keep you in the loop. There was the part of the recommendation was surrounding potentially having a kind of introductory sentence to the definition section. I had come up with one. I got further feedback from the state floodplain manager saying that it may be a conflict with FEMA's review of what's required. So I think we are comfortable that we've left it with, there won't be an introductory sentence, but all of the definitions that have been included have references as to where they come from. So I think, you know, that it is what it is. We're kind of in a balance of where, you know, what's been proposed to be potentially more restrictive, particularly in the use regulations section of that ordinance. But also there's a majority of it that's just simply required by the National Flood Insurance Program to be enacted. So so that's the happy medium that we arrived at. And then we'll have that discussion again with the city council.
Thank you.
Any unforeseen items?
I just have one small request. These, the OSRD and the cluster development plan, as new information comes in, could it be put in a separate folder? So, because the material gets so vast and I've looked at and analyzed and read all of it up to today, and then to sort through and figure out what I've read and what I haven't read is hard. Does that make sense?
So what I'll do is, and I think I did that with the 171 this evening. I said
Yeah.
revised, but I'll date those folders so that when everything gets carried forward, you'll only see anything that's new information, and I'll put a date on the folder for that meeting.
That's not good, because then sometimes I'm missing the plan or something that was the original submission. But if it could be like, you know, 19 Cole Ave, and then like old material that we've already done, and then new material, is that okay?
That's what I'm suggesting. Like within the folder of that topic, it'll
Yeah.
be carried forward material and then new material.
Yeah, perfect. Thank
Okay.
you. Does everybody else agree? I'm just having trouble waiting.
No,
through.
I agree. It's a lot of management, and particularly when things are coming in 2 days before the meeting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are we ready to adjourn, Mr. Chairman? Before we adjourn, I wanted to thank Jane for stepping forward to take the position on the Community Preservation Committee. Craig, what's the administrative procedure for moving Jane's, because Jane has to go through the procedure. I was in the city clerk's office today, and she'll have to be sworn in as a member of that committee.
Yeah, we've, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was weird. It just got soft for a second. Yeah, so we're going through and working with the administration on appointments for a number of different committees. And I've brought that to their attention, and I'll make sure that occurs. And so at some point, Jane, you'll have to hop in and get sworn in.
Jane has been kind enough, even though the meeting was a little strange, and I apologize for that, Jane. Jane's been kind enough to sit in, and I think it's important because the thing that's going on in that committee right now is long-range planning, and that's the thing that's going to have to come through. And I don't expect this, Jane, to be finished with the long-range planning by the time you come back officially as a member of the whole thing. I think you'll be quite involved in that. So
Yeah, Greg, Hank's term is up February 14th, but I'm
Yes.
away starting February 4th. So if I have to do something, I have to do it before then.
Okay. I'll be in touch with you on that.
Okay. I didn't know my vacation was going to be so inconvenient to the planning board. I'm sorry.
I'll be here still, Jane.
February is actually, Jane, the normal month for disruptions as far as school vacations and so forth.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's not all that unusual.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion to adjourn, or do you have something else?
Yes, sir. No.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting. And
Second.
Thank you, Beverly.
Roll call. Member Noonan,
Yes.
Member McCarl,
yes.
Member Bookin,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Henry,
Yes, sir.
Member Remsen,
Yes.
Member Rosen.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
See some of you in a couple of weeks, then some of you in a few more weeks.
Good night, folks.
Thank
care.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
We'll
Thank
get
you.
this, we'll get this thing working, Craig. Eventually, at least I did get onto the meeting this time without all the problems from last time. So I guess we could have a workaround on the thing. Thank you for your help.
We'll get your,
Good night.
your ham radio uplink working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Portable electric power.
There you go. There you go.